Welcome to the AI and I Show, where we dive deep into fascinating conversations with our guest. Today, we're exploring the intersection of music and mantras. I'm your host, ChatGPT, and with me is our insightful guest. Let's get right into it with our first question. How did you first discover the power of mantras in music?
I feel like as a child, when I hit a rough patch, I realized that the music that I was listening to inherently inspired or made me fall back into my comfort zones or things of that nature. So I realized that by centralizing my music around mantras that really propelled me into a forward, positive thinking facet, I eventually became a much better person because of it. And throughout my life, I've been aspiring to find or create those mantras for people.
That's really profound. It's amazing how music can serve as both a comfort and a catalyst for personal growth. Now, delving deeper into this, what elements do you think are essential for a mantra to have a transformative impact within music?
Well, I mean, relativity, right? Like, I feel like if the mantra is the shoe fits, then the shoe is going to fit and you're going to run with those shoes. Realistically, we want to find mantras that help us positively influence our lifestyle. I feel like there's a lot of mantras out here floating that emphasize or glorify a negative lifestyle or way of thinking or living. And I've tried to isolate myself from them, but they're so predominant in the zeitgeist and the ever-evolving culture that I had to exclude myself from a lot of public functions that embraced that kind of thinking.
Absolutely. The mantra has to resonate personally and promote a constructive message. It's interesting how you've navigated away from negative influences. With that in mind, how do you go about creating or selecting mantras for your music?
Well, when I make songs, realistically, I try to make songs for myself to inspire myself to reach the next level of my life. So, for example, I was recently in a bit of a tight situation with a company I was working with, and I felt devalued and demoralized. So I made a mantra to remind myself who I was, what I stood for, and the positive facets that I bring into this realm. And I needed to make sure that it resonated with people. But that wasn't really my main focus beyond it propelling me to elevate, which it did. And here we are now.
That's a powerful approach, using your own experiences as a springboard for creating mantras that elevate you. It's a reminder that music can be deeply personal, yet universally relatable. Now, considering the impact your mantras have had on you, have you received feedback from listeners about how your music and mantras have influenced them?
Yeah, I've actually had people talk to me about how some of my music has inspired them through tough situations. And I've had people tell me about how they relate to the stories that I weave. And personally, I find that deeply moving, and I appreciate everybody who understands the deeper nuances hidden inside of the music. There's a lot of subtext and a lot of relative situations that I try to make it so that a guy who's trying to get out of college can fit into it the same way that a person who is in a tight situation in the streets can fit into it. So ultimately, my way of thinking is, how can I make this fit in such a beautiful manner that is multifaceted? And ultimately, that's what I've been doing as of late.
It's clear your music resonates on many levels, which is a testament to your thoughtful approach. Now, looking ahead, how do you see the role of mantras in music evolving, especially with the growing emphasis on mental health and well-being in our society?
Well, ideally, people start resonating towards songs that don't make them want to commit things that are like harmful to themselves or people around them. I feel like the zeitgeist, as I've said, definitely revolves around some very, very toxic ways of thinking. And I hope that people realize that subconsciously they're feeding themselves narratives that ultimately flourish and not in the best ways into their lives. So I implore people to deeply comb through what they're listening to and understand the nuances that they're digesting. Obviously, I still digest music that's not exactly to par with what I hold, but I understand that there's intricacies in like production and things of that nature that I find resonant with. So I could see the value in some of those things, but I ultimately understand the deeper meaning behind the intrinsic art that we digest.
That's a thoughtful perspective, advocating for a more mindful approach to what we consume musically. With that awareness, listeners can make more intentional choices, leading to a healthier mental and emotional state. For our final question, what advice would you give to aspiring musicians who want to incorporate mantras into their music?
Well, the saying is, be the change that you wish to see in this world. So if we come from a tumultuous path of poverty or lack or violence or things of that nature, why are we going to preach and elevate things of that nature beyond exploratory narratives? Because I get the understand of wanting to explore the situation, but to elevate it and keep it going in a vicious cycle of negative energy, we just keep on feeding the loop that never ends. So ultimately, I implore people to think about what they listen to, implore them to think about what they're writing, and implore them to think about the positive facets that they could feed into people's minds. There's songs that I listen to that sometimes I don't want to get out of bed. I feel really negatively about situations, and those songs will just spring me out of bed, and it's time to go. It's time to go. So I implore people to elevate what they surround themselves with and what they broadcast, because we have a future that is very interesting, and we will need those shining beacons of light in very dark, tumultuous seas.
That's powerful advice. Focusing on positive transformation and being mindful of the messages we put out into the world can truly make a difference. Thank you for sharing your insights. It's been enlightening to explore the impact of mantras in music with you. And with that, we conclude this episode of the AI and I Show. Until next time.